By the beginning of 79 AD, the cities of Campania were thriving. The Gulf of Naples had become the favorite resort destination of the Roman elite. Patricians, wealthy plebeians, and even some emperors owned luxurious villas along its shores. Pompeii, in particular, had become a vibrant center of culture and entertainment. Bored and affluent Romans flocked to the city in search of every pleasure money could buy. And Pompeii delivered, catering to even the most extravagant of tastes. The city boasted 2 theaters, an arena for gladiatorial games, the first of its kind in the entire empire, 2 gymnasia for physical exercise, and countless thermopolia and luminaria. The shelves of Pompeii's markets overflowed with fine food and wine, exotic spices, luxury goods, rare fabrics, and of course, attractive slaves. Settling at the foot of an active volcano might seem reckless today, but in the 1st century, Mount Vesuvius had not erupted for over 1,000 years. No one expected any danger. To most, it was simply a mountain, and the surrounding land was both breathtaking and incredibly fertile. The mineral-rich volcanic soil yielded abundant harvests. Even today, the water from hundreds of local springs and rivers is considered to be among the finest in all of Italy. Grains, vegetables, and fruits thrived in the region, while the Gulf of Naples teemed with fish and seafood. The slopes of Vesuvius were blanketed with vineyards, and the wine produced there, known as the blood of Vesuvius, was celebrated throughout the empire. Who could have imagined that, by year's end, all of this would be buried under a thick layer of volcanic ash and dust? The prosperous cities of Pompeii, Herculaneum, Stabiae, and Oplontis were utterly destroyed. The cause of this devastation was the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, an event that, even 2,000 years later, remains one of the most significant natural disasters in human history. In 62 AD, 17 years before the eruption, a powerful earthquake struck the region. Stronger. Yeah, like that. Though the exact magnitude is unknown, the damage to Pompeii was extensive. Roofs collapsed, walls buckled, columns and statues toppled. In hindsight, it was an ominous warning of the catastrophe to come. But the Romans, of course, had no way of knowing that. Earthquakes were fairly common in the area, after all. Fortunately, a first-hand account of the eruption survives in 2 letters written by the Roman author Pliny the Younger to the historian Publius Cornelius Tacitus. At the time, Pliny was just 17 years old, living with his mother and his uncle, Pliny the Elder, in Misenum, about 30 kilometers from Vesuvius. There, a dormant volcanic crater had formed a natural harbor, making it an ideal location for a Roman naval base. Pliny the Elder served as the praefectus of the fleet stationed there. Until recently, scholars believed the eruption occurred on October 24th or 25th, 79 AD, a date given by Pliny himself in his letters. However, recent archaeological evidence points to a later date, possibly in October or even November. Among the finds were carbonized pomegranates, a fruit that typically ripens in late September. Additionally, the clothing worn by victims of the eruption also suggests a cooler season. They were dressed in warm garments, which would have been unusual for late August. Finally, archaeologists discovered an inscription on the wall dated 16 days before the November calends, that is, October 17th. Around noon, a strange dark gray cloud began rising above Vesuvius. It climbed a tall column before spreading out near the top, resembling a stone pine tree. According to Pliny, they saw flashes of lightning and flames erupting from the cloud, accompanied by loud claps of thunder. Pliny the Younger's mother was the first to notice this ominous cloud. His uncle, Pliny the Elder, a renowned scientist and naturalist, decided to get a closer look to study the phenomenon. He had invited his nephew to join him, but Pliny the Younger had declined. While Pliny the Elder was preparing for the journey, he received a message from Rectina, the wife of a friend. She had a villa at the base of Vesuvius, near Herculaneum, and was pleading for help to escape. Pliny immediately ordered all ships of his fleet to ready for departure. He intended not only to rescue Rectina, but also to evacuate as many people from Herculaneum as possible. The ship set sail and headed toward the danger. Pliny himself captained the flagship, and as they approached, he carefully observed the eruption, dictating his impressions to his secretary. Tragically, these valuable records were lost to history. Unfortunately, the squadron was unable to reach Herculaneum or take on refugees. The ships were bombarded by volcanic pumice, ash, and scalding rain. The coastline itself was altered by the eruption. New shallow spots appeared in unexpected places, making navigation treacherous. To make matters worse, the sea was rough, and a strong northeast wind pushed the ships away from Rectina's location. Seeing the situation, Pliny famously declared "Fortis fortuna duvat," meaning fortune favors the bold, and ordered the fleet instead to sail to Stabiae, where his friend Pomponianus lived. Pomponianus was deeply agitated by the unfolding disaster, but welcomed Pliny and his officers warmly. That evening, they dined together, drank wine, and then retired for the night. The towering pine-shaped cloud was actually a massive convection column, made up of ash, stones, pumice, steam, and toxic gases. It rose to a height of nearly 18 miles high, and the northeast wind drove it toward Pompeii. Soon, the entire sky was covered, and darkness had engulfed the doomed city. Ash and pumice began falling steadily, though initially not fatally. The pumice fragments were small, just a few inches in diameter. From the outset, earthquakes rocked the region, growing in intensity with each passing hour. During the first day of the eruption, the ash and pumice layer accumulated at a rate of 6 inches per hour. Within a few hours, the sheer weight began to cause roofs to collapse. By evening, lava flows started descending from the crater of Vesuvius, but they did not reach the cities. Instead, they ignited vineyards and trees along the mountain's slopes. In the total darkness, the glow of fires provided the only light. Around midnight, the first phase of the eruption, the so-called Plinian phase, during which the pine-shaped cloud had formed, came to an end. The explosive force diminished. As a result, the gases, ash, and pumice no longer had the power to shoot high into the sky. Instead, they began to cascade down the slopes of Vesuvius. The pyroclastic phase of the eruption had begun. A pyroclastic flow is a deadly cloud of hot, toxic volcanic gases, steam, rocks, pumice, and debris. These flows surged down the slopes of the volcano with terrifying force. The gas within them could reach temperatures of up to 900 Celsius, that's 1600 Fahrenheit, and their speed often exceeded 100 miles an hour, obliterating everything in their path. Anyone caught in a pyroclastic flow would die instantly. Over the course of a few hours, 7 such flows erupted from Vesuvius. By this time, many people had already fled. Residents of Pompeii and Oplontis escaped southward towards Stabiae, Salernum, and Sorrentum. From Herculaneum, others fled north toward Naples, Misenum, and Cumae. But not everyone made it out. Among those left behind were the elderly, the disabled, pregnant women, and children. Others simply underestimated the danger, believing that the eruption would pass without serious consequences. Many slaves were abandoned by their masters to guard homes and property. Before the eruption, Pompeii's population was around 11,000 people. By the time the pyroclastic phase began, an estimated 2,000 to 3,000 people remained. In Herculaneum, only a few hundred people stayed behind. They sought shelter in the dockside warehouses, hoping to escape the falling pumice and stones. All of them were killed instantly when the first pyroclastic flow struck the city. A second pyroclastic flow bypassed major settlements, but a third one roared straight toward Pompeii. Miraculously, the city's massive walls held. The searing wave of gas and debris slammed into them, but the same walls that once withstood the advance of even the legendary Hannibal now offered Pompeii a temporary reprieve. The flow, after slamming into the city walls, partially stalled, but also swept around them. Regardless, it was a devastating blow to Pompeii. Many of those who had stayed behind now tried to flee, but it was too late. Their bodies would later be found along the road to Stabiae. About an hour later, the fourth pyroclastic flow surged down the volcano. The debris left by a previous flow had acted like a ramp, allowing this one to breach the city walls and engulf Pompeii in its entirety. At the very moment the first flow claimed the lives of Herculaneum's remaining residents, Pomponianus, alarmed by the worsening conditions, ordered that Pliny be awakened. By then, ash and pumice had nearly buried Pomponianus's villa. In some places, it reached the rooftops. Earthquakes rocked the area, shaking walls and sending tremors through the ground. Pliny and Pomponianus debated their options: stay put or attempt to reach the ships and sail to safety. They chose to leave. Before setting out, they tied pillows to their heads to shield themselves from falling pumice and stones. It was dark as night, with only the distant glow of fires providing any light. Pliny, Pomponianus, and their companions made their way to the harbor, but severe weather prevented the ships from setting sail. A storm raged offshore, and strong winds blew inland from the sea. They had decided to wait for conditions to improve, and Pliny lay down on the sand to rest. At that moment, a pyroclastic flow had reached the coast. It was the same flow that had just consumed Pompeii, but by the time it arrived, it had lost much of its force and heat. It was now essentially a cloud of fast-moving hot air, ash, and dust. When the group smelled sulfur in the air, Pliny's companions fled. Pliny, however, was left behind. He was elderly and overweight, unable to run as fast as the others. His body was found a few days later, once sunlight finally pierced through the thick clouds of ash and dust. Most likely, he died of suffocation after inhaling poisonous volcanic gases. Interestingly, many Romans did not interpret the catastrophe as a natural disaster, but rather as a supernatural event. Some believed a new gigantomachy had occurred, a cosmic battle between the gods and the giants. According to the Roman historian Cassius Dio, shortly before the eruption, groups of unusually tall figures were seen approaching the city walls. People had claimed to hear the sounds of war horns and clashing swords coming from the volcanic cloud, while the flashes of fire and thunder were believed to be Jupiter himself throwing thunderbolts from the heavens. And so ended the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. It claimed the lives of an estimated 12,000 people. The cities of Pompeii, Herculaneum, Stabiae, and Oplontis were buried beneath layers of volcanic ash. In Pompeii, the ash reached a total depth of about 10 feet. In some places, the rooftops of the tallest temples still poked through the surface. Herculaneum and Oplontis were buried even deeper, under more than 40 feet of volcanic material. What was once a lush and thriving valley of gardens, farmland, and luxurious villas became a silent, lifeless wasteland. Yet, within just a few years, life returned. New settlements began to rise, and the region slowly came back to life. Once again, if you've made it to the end of this video, we really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. We have a whole team behind this, and we really love seeing you follow along on our journey through ancient civilizations. We put out new content every single week. If you'd like to support the channel and help us make more videos like this, consider joining us on Patreon. You'll get early access to new episodes, work-in-progress updates, and more. Every bit of support goes a really long way. Thank you. You can also leave a super thanks down below if you'd like to give us a little extra boost. It really means a lot and helps us keep going. We hope to see you next time.